been the collaboration like been with Steven so far? I mean, has that...
It's unbelievable. It really is surreal. And because there's a genre element to the movie, it's impossible to work with him and not constantly reference the work he's done, and you don't want to sound like you're being a sycophant, but it's been incredible. He's been beyond helpful, and the movie is, I think, very much in the spirit of some of the Amblin films that he made years ago. So it is a dream come true, and I couldn't imagine working on something that was more sort of personal and also kind of hyper real. You know, it's not like the movie is some kind of autobiography, but there's a lot of stuff in it that feels very personal.
Will a film called Super 8 be in 3D? No. No?
Nice, yeah.
Very interesting.
Interesting. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Let's talk about 3D filmmaking, because that's been a big storyline in movies this year. Are you guys fans of the current 3D? I mean, do you like 3D as a movie-going experience, not as movie makers, but as moviegoers?
Honestly, I'm totally into it. I love it. I really think the technology is really good. It kind of puts you in the space. It doesn't give me a big headache. And I think that it's being done so much now that we're past the eat the pancake, sort of poke things at the screen era of 3D, and you can just it just adds a little something. There are definitely movies where, that shouldn't be in 3D. I don't know, like Cabin in the Woods. Although I was watching Once Upon a Time in the West, I was like, this might be okay in 3D. It's all about space, you know?
The thing that drives me crazy about 3D though is when you put the glasses on, everything just gets dim. Like it all feels a little sort of gray and muted, and I feel like I want to see the I want to see the movie, and I feel like you get into it. But for me, it always has that, my brain adjusts to it after a while, but it always has those first few minutes are always like, oh wow, this seems like less than, the experience, like an IMAX experience to me, which is my favorite kind of experience because it's so, immersive. But the 3D thing for me, I'm not totally on board yet, but I'm sure it's too late for me. So.
I mean, as storytellers, are there any opportunities are you writing to 3D in any way in your current projects? Writing to 3D with 3D in mind.
Me?
Yeah.
No. I'm not, there's definitely no, and then the sharp thing comes right at him. The thing is, if you're making an action movie, 3D, it lends itself to that anyway. Things are going to come at the screen. Things are going to, you're going to want to get that sense of space. You're going to want to get that sense of where they are and how they're coming at each other. It's going to be that kind of experience anyway. It's going to work in 2D. The movie has to work in 2D. Most people will see it that way. So you just you'll take it into account ultimately when you're framing, but I don't think it doesn't really change the way I shoot. There are a few things. You want, a sort of a sense of, depth of field where you get, that you get with the shorter lenses or wider lenses. I like those anyway. You don't cut as much because, it messes up the eye a little bit. I like that anyway. You want things to be coming at people so it's exciting. I also like that. So it hasn't changed anything except it's going to make it harder to shoot.
Years ago, I was in New York and I was kind of a little sick, and it was late at night. I turned the TV on. I wasn't feeling very well, and I was switching the channels, and this movie came on. It was about a bunch of young adults, and they were acting really weird, and they were like, they were really scared about something, but like it kept doing these weird jump cuts, and I had no idea what they were scared of. And then they would like offer someone something. They'd be like, "Here, do you want some food?" And they push right out, and the person would say, "Sure, thanks." And they take it. It's like, what the hell? And there was like, they were talking about like these romantic scenes that didn't exist. And I realized it was Friday the 13th 3D with no 3D, no violence, no sex. Everything was cut out. And it was actually better.
Joss, can you talk a little bit about, you mentioned Cabin in the Woods. Yeah, and can you talk a little bit about why the 3D kind of conversion came about, and when are we going to see this film?
I'll answer the second question first. The fate of the studio that has the movie is in flux. Therefore, I mean, they've put James Bond on hold, and I don't think we come before him. So we really don't know what. The film is finished. The 3D thing came because they looked at the schedule and said, oh my God, every horror movie is going to be 3D forever for the next few years, and so we should convert it now. That, by the way, may still happen. But Drew shot something very specifically in, you know, a classical mode. Like, he went away from, you know, really in your face and tried to keep things sort of, you know, we were studying John Carpenter and really keep the suspense and make it almost a little old-fashioned. So what we're hoping to do is be the only horror movie when we come out that's not in 3D, so that we can advertise 2D. You'll believe things can move across the screen. Cabin in the Woods, it's painterly. It's gonna be, you know, it's gonna revolutionize the industry.
Last question about 3D for you guys, which is, do you think that this is just a fad, or do you think it's kind of really changing the way we're going to see movies? It's changing the way maybe that like young kids going to the movies are what they expect from film? I mean, is it here to stay, do you think?
I have no idea.
You have no idea?
I don't. I really don't. I mean, my guess is that it will continue. The equipment will be there. The technology will get better. It will continue. Not everything will be made in 3D, but a lot will. I have no idea.
I think it's. I don't think it's a fad. And I do think it is kind of extraordinarily immersive when it works. But everything is always going to be built for a zillion different platforms, and many of them are simply not going to be 3D. So it's going to be there, but it's not going to like take over completely. You know, watch that 3 years from now, my phone will be like,
Joss, a couple of years ago, you made a little thing called Dr. Horrible's Single Line Wall. And you did that for many reasons. But you created it at a time when television writers were on strike. And there was a lot of talk about whether or not the internet could be sort of a viable alternative for TV writers as a mode of expression or a business model. Looking back on that now, kind of like, how do you feel about the internet opportunity, and is that like a future mode for you to do more?
well, gosh, I hope so. I definitely feel like I missed my window a little bit. I was after Dr. Horrible, I sort of kind of was like waiting for everybody else to show up at the party. I was like, okay, now we're gonna get this all together, we're gonna make a ton of internet stuff, it's gonna be really interesting. Dr. Horrible made money, and it made money for me, but I was the studio, but also for the writers, the actors, all of them were profit participants. So it really worked as a model by which people can actually go ahead and make a profit on the internet. People always say, well, there's no money there at all, there's less. Obviously, there's much less than can be had in movies and TV, but it can be done. And I was proud of that model because, it benefited many of the artists who worked on it. And me as the studio, it benefited more. So that was great. But then I really did think, well, people will see this and want to get in on it. But the studios, their views of how it would work were extraordinarily old-fashioned, and I kind of sat on my hands. We were trying, obviously, to, create, say, a sequel to Dr. Horrible.
Yeah.
Part of the other problem was that we all had jobs. That was also my fault. I was just at the cusp of sort of getting something, and I don't even know, this isn't something I've ever mentioned at all in public, but I started to work on an internet piece with Warren Ellis called Wastelanders that I was going to direct. And then Warren Ellis saw that I was doing the Avengers and said, okay, I'll just wait then. So, there is a bunch of stuff that I would love to do. I think there is a way to make it work, but you have to be able, and I'm in this position, to lower your expectations and to work in a modular fashion where you don't put everything on the table at once. You just keep building where it builds and scaling back where it doesn't.
JJ, does this interest you at all? Like creating something like,
Yes,
digital?
very much so. In fact, it's there are a couple things we're working on right now at Bad Robot that I think will be, sort of following Joss's lead on that. To me, the technology that exists it's remarkable what you can do. We shot a commercial for like a Star Trek DVD, literally using the camera that I used to film my kids' soccer games. Like the fact, the Canon 5D Mark II, like the fact that you can use that camera and it looks the way it does, has the lenses that you can get, and that you can go and rent one, you can go and buy one, someone has one. It's like you can actually make movies now. And so for me, doing something like Star Trek, clearly you need the resources of a studio, and also they own Star Trek. But when you have an idea for something and you've got friends, like I think my guess is that what Joss realized was he's working with the people he would hire at the studio. He knows them, they are friends. Why not ask them if they want to do this? They can be owners in this thing. They can, have put their heart and soul into it, and it's a shorter, typically, investment of time. So to me, it's a hugely exciting thing. And there's actually someone here, we haven't sort of signed all the documents yet, but there's someone who has a table here on the floor who's got a series of characters, and we're actually working with her to create one of these things now that will hopefully be out online soon.
Joss, with all that said, is there a Dr. Horrible sequel in the works, or is that just a question of time availability of your talent?
Works is a strong word. It's in turnaround. The studio of me. It's me and Jed, Marissa, and Zach going, man, I've written a couple songs. We got to get together. Yeah, we totally got to do that. It's going really well. If we had the time, we really do feel like we know what the movie is, and we really want to do it, and we want to do it on our terms, but our terms seem to be interminable.
You guys have your own production companies, and we know their names very well: Bad Robot, Mutant Enemy. And then
We should fight.
Who would win?
Or kiss.
In the new media future, could these be like channels, like on the internet? Like, will there be sort of like a Bad Robot channel, like in the future, that is programmed with material, or a Mutant Enemy channel that's programmed with material?
I think for me, the problem with the channel is to actually keep up with the amount of material that you need. The one day, which would be day 2, that someone goes there and like, oh, nothing new. It's like you're over, So in theory, it's great. I would rather do a Bad Robot button that appears on various places on the internet, and when there's something new, you click on it, then you go there.
I always dream of the channel. I always go, oh, and I've got all these ideas, but then I realize, but then I'd have to write them. And yeah, it's coming any minute now. Stay tuned. You'd have to basically build your entire product like long before you showed anything. And but I think the idea of a channel, you just devolved it into a button. It's changing. It's gonna be something very different. I do think if I saw something that said Bad Robot, I would push that button or hit that widget or touch that 3D holographic whatever you're supposed to do to get to it. I would kiss that robot.
Joss, you just got done. Dollhouse has come to an end, unfortunately.
What?
And you produced Dollhouse after being away from television for a while. Now that Dollhouse is over, how are you feeling about television? Kind of like, what lessons have you learned about sort of what television wants and supports right now?
I don't know why this question sounds a little bit like, well, are you proud of what you did? Maybe you should sit in the corner and think about it. But that might just be me projecting. It must have been the wrong place. It must have been the wrong time. I really did, I definitely was trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. And we, I think, both benefited from the great square hole of television, the WB, where they were just interested in people like us who had a story we knew how to tell, and they let us do that. That is very rare.